give me, so I told Mr. Jefferson $20 would probably do it. But all he was willing to offer me was $1. I think the arcade was too loud for Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson, so they didn't want to go inside. They told us to go in by ourselves and meet them outside in 10 minutes. I went to the back of the arcade, where they have this game called Thunderbolt. I spent about $50 on that game last year, and I got the high score. I wanted Rowley to see my name at the top of the list, because I wanted to show him what it was like to win something without it being handed to you. Well, my name was still at the top of the list, but the person who got the next highest score must have been jealous they couldn't beat me. So the high scores list read, High scores. 1, Greg Heffley. 2, is an idiot. I unplugged the machine to try and wipe out the high scores, but they were burned into the screen permanently. I was going to just spend our money on some other game, but then I remembered a trick Roderick told me about, and I realized we could make the dollar last a lot longer. Me and Rowley walked outside and went underneath the boardwalk. Then I slipped the dollar bill up between the planks of wood and waited for our first victim. Eventually, a teenager spotted the dollar sticking out of the boardwalk and said, "Score!" When he went to grab it, I pulled the dollar bill through the slat at the last second. I have to hand it to Roderick, because this was actually a lot of fun. The teenagers we pranked weren't too happy, though, and they came after us. Me and Rowley ran as fast as we could, and we didn't stop until we were pretty sure we shook those guys. But I still didn't feel safe. I asked Rowley to show me some of the moves he learned in karate, so we could handle those guys if they found us. But Rowley said he's a gold belt in karate, and he wasn't going to teach his moves to a no belt. We hid there a while more, but the teenagers never showed up, and eventually we decided the coast was clear. That's when we realized we were underneath Kittyland. So there was a whole new batch of victims for our dollar bill trick right above our heads, and we got a much better reaction out of those kids than we did from the teenagers. Some of them even started to bawl. But one of the kids was really fast, and he grabbed the dollar before I could pull it down. So me and Rowley had to go up on the boardwalk to get it back. The kid wasn't budging, though. I tried to explain the concept of personal property to him, but he still wouldn't give us our money. I was getting pretty frustrated with this kid, and that's when Rowley's parents showed up. I was pretty glad to see them because I figured if anyone could talk some sense into this kid, it was Mr. Jefferson. But Mr. Jefferson was mad, and I mean really mad. He said he and Mrs. Jefferson had been looking all over for us for the past hour, and they were ready to call the police to report us missing. Then he told us we had to get in the car. But on the way to the parking lot, we walked past the arcade. I asked Mr. Jefferson if we could please have another dollar since we never did get to spend that one he gave us. But I guess that wasn't the right thing to ask, because he took us back to the car without saying a word. When we got back to the cabin, Mr. Jefferson said me and Rowley had to go straight to our room. That really stunk, because it wasn't even 8 o'clock and it was still light outside. But Mr. Jefferson said we had to go to bed, and that he didn't want to hear a peep out of us until morning. Rowley was taking it really hard. From the way he was acting, I don't think he's ever been in trouble with his dad before. I decided to lighten the mood a little bit. I walked around on the shag carpet and then gave Rowley a static electricity shock as a joke. Zip! That seemed to get Rowley to snap out of it. He walked around in a circle for about 5 minutes, rubbing his feet on the carpet, and then got me back while I was brushing my teeth. Zap! I couldn't let Rowley one-up me like that, so when he got into bed, I got his boppy balloon, pulled back the giant rubber band, and let it rip. Bang! Right onto his bare arm. If I had to do it again, maybe I wouldn't have pulled back so hard. When Rowley saw the red mark on his arm, he screamed, and I knew that was going to attract attention. Sure enough, his parents were up in our room in 5 seconds. He told them, He burned me. I tried to explain that the mark on Rowley's arm was from a rubber band, but that didn't seem to matter to the Jeffersons. They called my parents, and 2 hours later, Dad was at the cabin to pick me up and take me home. Monday. Dad's really mad that he had to drive 4 hours round trip to come get me. But Mom wasn't mad at all. She said the incident between me and Rowley was just horseplay, and she was glad we were pals again. But Dad is still mad, and it's been really chilly between us ever since we got back. Mom's been trying to get the two of us to do something like go to the movies together so we can make peace. But I think right now it's best for me and Dad to just stay out of each other's way. I think Dad's bad mood is here to stay, though, and part of it has nothing to do with me. When I opened up today's paper, here's what I saw in the arts section. Beloved comic to continue. Lil Cutie to be carried on by original cartoonist's son. In a stunning development, Tyler Post, the son of Lil Cutie cartoonist Bob Post, will take up the pen and carry on his father's enduring one-panel comic. I didn't really have a job or any big plans, so one day I said, "How hard can it be?" said Tyler, who, at 32, is living with his father. Last night, Dad came into my room and talked to me, which was the first time we spoke to each other in about 3 days. He said he wanted to make sure I was around on Sunday, and I said I would be. Later on, I heard him talking to someone on the phone, and he seemed to be acting kind of secretive. I overheard him say, "Yes, and I'll leave him with enough food and water for a week." After that, I asked Dad if he was taking me anywhere in particular on Sunday, and that seemed to make him really uncomfortable. He said no, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. Now I knew Dad wasn't telling the truth, so I started to get kind of worried. Dad was willing to ship me off to a military academy before, and I wouldn't put anything past him. I didn't know what to do, so I told Roderick what was going on and asked him if he had any theories about what Dad was up to. He told me he'd think about it, and a little while later, he came up to my room and shut the door. Roderick told me he thought Dad was so mad about the Rowley thing that he was gonna get rid of me. I wasn't sure if I believed him, because Roderick's not always 100% reliable. But Roderick told me if I didn't believe him, I should go check out Dad's day planner and see for myself. So I went into Dad's office and opened his calendar to Sunday, and here's what I found. Sunday, August 20. Sell Greg. I'm pretty sure Roderick was pulling my leg, because it looked an awful lot like his handwriting. But Dad's kind of an unpredictable guy, so I guess I'll just have to wait until Sunday to know for sure. Sunday. The good news is Dad didn't sell me or give me away to an orphanage today. The bad news is, after what happened, he probably will. At about 10 o'clock this morning, Dad said to get in the car because he wanted to take me into the city. When I asked what for, he said it was a surprise. That made me shudder. On the way into the city, we stopped for gas. Dad had left a map and directions on the dashboard of the car, so now I knew where we were going. 1200 Bayside Street. Well, I was pretty desperate, so for the first time ever, I used my ladybug. I finished my call right before Dad came back to the car, and we headed into the city. I just wish I took a better look at that map, because when we pulled up to Bayside Street, I realized it was the parking lot for the baseball stadium. But by then, it was too late. It turns out Mom had bought us tickets to the baseball game for some special father-son bonding, and Dad was trying to keep it a surprise. But it took Dad a long time to explain all of that to the cops. After he cleared things up with the police, Dad wasn't in the mood for a baseball game, so he just took me home. I felt kind of bad because the seats Mom got us were in the 3rd row, and it looked to me like they cost a fortune. We saw them on TV. We knew they were ours, 'cause there were the 2 cops, having a grand old time. Tuesday. I finally found out what that phone call was all about the other day. Dad had been on the phone with Grandma, and they were talking about Sweetie, not me. Mom and Dad had decided to give the dog to Grandma, and Dad dropped Sweetie off on Sunday night. To be honest with you, I don't think anyone's really going to miss him around here. Me and Dad haven't talked to each other since then, and I've been looking for excuses to stay out of the house. I found a really good one yesterday. There was a commercial on TV for this store called the Game Hut, which is where I buy all my video games. They're having a competition where you play at your local store, and if you win, you get to advance to the national playoffs, and the winner of that gets $1 million. The competition at my local store is on Saturday. I'm sure there are going to be a ton of people at that thing, so I'm going to go super early to make sure I get a good place in line. I learned that trick from Roderick. Whenever he wants to get tickets to a concert, he camps out the night before. In fact, that's where he met his band's lead singer, Bill. Bill just came up to Roderick in line and asked, "Can I bum a potato chip?" Rowley and his dad go camping all the time, so I knew he had a tent. I called Rowley and told him about the video game contest and how we could win $1 million. But Rowley was acting nervous on the phone. I think he was still worried that I had electrical superpowers or something, and the only way to get him to calm down was to promise I wouldn't use them on him. Even after we were past that, Rowley didn't seem comfortable with the campout idea. He said his mom and dad banned him from seeing me for the rest of the summer. I pretty much figured that, but I had a plan to get around it. I told Rowley that I'd tell my parents I was going up to his house to spend the night, and he could tell his parents he was going to Colin's. Rowley still didn't seem sure, so I told him I'd bring him his very own box of gummy bears if he came along, and that sold him. Saturday. Last night we met at the top of the hill at 9 o'clock. Rowley brought the camping equipment and the sleeping bag, and I brought the flashlight and some chocolate energy bars. I didn't have the gummy bears right at that moment, but I promised Rowley I'd buy him some the first chance I got. When we got to the game hut, we were the only people there, and I couldn't believe our luck. So we pitched our tent in front of the store before anyone else could take our spot. Then we watched the door to make sure no one tried to cut in front of us. I figured the best way to save our place in line was to sleep in shifts. I even offered to take the first shift and let Rowley sleep, because that's just the kind of person I am. After my shift was over, I woke Rowley up for his turn, but he fell back asleep in about 5 seconds. So I shook him awake and told him he needed to stay alert. Rowley didn't even bother trying to defend himself. He told me, "I don't even really like video games," and went back to sleep. I decided it was up to me to make sure nobody got in front of us, so I stayed up all night. I was starting to have trouble keeping my eyes open around 9 o'clock in the morning, and I ate both of the energy bars I packed to keep myself going. I got chocolate all over my hands, and that gave me an idea. I opened the tent flap, then slipped my hand inside and made it crawl like a spider. I thought it would be funny to make Rowley think it was the muddy hand. I didn't hear any noises coming from inside the tent, so I thought Rowley was still sleeping. But before I had a chance to open the flap and check, my hand got crushed to smithereens. It got wham, 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 whammed by Rowley's mallet. I pulled my hand out of the tent, and my thumb was already starting to turn purple. I was really ticked off at Rowley, not because he smashed my hand with a mallet, but because he thought that it could stop the muddy hand. Any fool knows you have to either use fire or acid to stop a muddy hand. All a mallet's going to do is make it angry. I was about to give Rowley